Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. I'm Adita Karkera, Chief Data Officer of the Government and Public Services Practice with Deloitte. And today I have the pleasure to have with me here Ravi Krishnan, Chief Data Officer for the state of North Dakota. Welcome, Ravi.
Thank you, Adita. Glad to be here.
What are some of the early challenges that you're starting to see, Ravi, in terms of data sharing? Because I know as good as the messaging of some of these projects are, I'm constantly hearing from government officials the challenges around data sharing and the challenges around making sure that we're sharing data with focus on privacy, security, and compliance. So you want to talk a little bit about what you're facing there?
Absolutely. Great question. Data sharing is definitely a challenge, right? And I say this, it exists in two levels. So one is the capabilities that we have today for data sharing across systems, across platforms, across agencies. It's always a little bit of a hit and miss. If you think about it from, a holistic, well-architected framework point of view, right? If you think about it, we have made great strides within North Dakota, though, with unification of agencies, all coming under one banner for the information technology needs. So several of these major agencies have come under NDIT's support model. But from the overall perspective, can these systems communicate with each other seamlessly, right? Are there secure communication channels set up for messages to be exchanged between these systems? Do we have a clear pathway to send data at scale, right? So those things will need to be tested out. We haven't gotten down that path yet, but I do believe, given my past experience in the private sector, that there will be some challenges to address. So I want to acknowledge that, upfront, because not every system was built in the same era. We do have mainframes today. We have some, microservices-oriented architecture. We have cloud architecture. So it's like past, present, and future, all available. But can they all talk to each other, right? I think that needs to be determined. The second aspect to it is obviously the legal aspect of sharing data, right? So can an agency's data be shared with another legally without, causing any governance issues? Because each of these agencies, they have their own policies and procedures for data sharing. So we will need to, cross some hurdles with respect to the legal approvals, making sure that our legal teams are fully engaged and aware how the data will be used, making sure that there are data sharing agreements that are set up that, constitute, fit for use data. What data is meant for what use? What is the extent to which we can use this data? Can we use it for reporting? Can we use it for making analytics and predictions? And this whole concept of AI for good, right? This is, again, a very, very, especially with the kind of data we're talking about, we got to doubly make sure that it's secured. It's not accessible by bad actors. And we want to make sure that we work with our, information security partners to make those aspects of it happen. So I would say those are the primary challenges. There's also a secondary challenge, I would say, is in terms of know-how, right? Because when these systems were designed and the people that have worked on these systems, they might have retired, they might have left the organization. So a lot of the domain knowledge around what data represents, what each field in each data set or each file represents, that's always a challenge in large organizations. So I do anticipate as we start peeling this onion, we will encounter things like that, but it's a challenge we can meet.
Yeah, no, great points. And I was scribbling some notes as you were talking, because a couple of things came up to my mind as you were talking about data being fit for purpose and being available. I mean, that's something else that I hear a lot from government CDOs. It's great that you want to do data sharing, but when you start bringing all these data sets together, how do you know and ensure that the quality of data is good, dependable, and fit for purpose? And that kind of brings up the question of governance and how, we bring governance around the multiple data sets that a state CDO has to have their eyes on, and that you are trying to bring together either for data sharing agreements or just to try to integrate multiple data sets, right? So I wonder what your thoughts are there and how you are tackling the problem of data quality and governance with the myriad of data sets that you're having to deal with.
From a governance point of view, where we are at in our journey is, governance is an important aspect of everything that we do. We have a formal governance, risk, and controls team within NDIT that handles a lot of the work that you just described. In addition to that, what I believe is kind of more of a priority for us at the moment is to really come up with our overall data strategy, right? Data strategy and data governance typically go hand in hand. So, and again, if you go back one level beyond that, right, just data strategy and governance, what are we building data strategy for? This is a data strategy for the state of North Dakota that will ensure, our path to the future, get things built the right way in the future state. But when you think about what that future state is, how is this data going to be governed? What are the best ways to do it? We almost had to kind of come back to the present. And this is where, we got to think about all the current state problems that we have to solve to meet our business as usual needs, right? So I'd say for us to kind of get to that point, it's important for us to get a good handle on everything that we have going on currently. One of the best ways to start is to partner with an agency and get that governance program started, right? So with the Department of Human Services, we have a formal data governance program in place. So I am actually on the steering committee with the Department of Human Services, helping and guiding them with my knowledge of governance from the past and helping to shape the nature of their program within that particular agency. So we always want to start small, but expand. And similarly, we have data governance programs that are already in place at different levels within Department of Public Instruction, as well as with the Department of Transportation. They've all dabbled in these areas. We want to help them expand their scope and purpose. Ultimately, the real prize, the real goal is to get a statewide data governance policy framework in place. That is absolutely the end goal. But I do realize that if we come up with the proposal, it's like the chicken or the egg problem, right? Which one's important? Do you have a centralized policy in place and have all the agencies, 50 plus agencies we work with, have them all follow that policy or that procedure? Or do we kind of, allow them to continue with their current paths, solve for current state problems, and take the best practices from each agency as we work through them? And then over time, along with the data strategy, have a formal data governance strategy, policy, and framework that's published. So that is the approach that we are trying to follow here. And in my short time, I realized that'll probably serve us well. Is instead of trying to boil the ocean, trying to start small, get some quick wins, get proof of concepts in place, demonstrate using, by our resources, why this is the right path forward, what value it brings, and then bring everybody on board along with our data literacy and governance programs.
That's great. That's great. And I love the approach of, starting small and not trying to boil the ocean all at once. Definitely a lot of value to that. And what you're saying, you're starting with, I think you said human services and helping them shape up their governance and their strategy, and then hoping to elaborate and expand and scale to multiple other organizations, eventually creating a statewide governance policy is your vision. That's very exciting, and I can't wait to maybe have another call with you in another 6 months and say, Ravi, how's it going? And you would probably have had your statewide governance in place by then. The question that comes to mind, Ravi, then is, how do we prioritize which data sets and which agencies do you want to start with? Because if I put on the hat of a policymaker, I would think each of these policy areas are so important and so critical, right? And then how do you start to define your priorities and say, okay, I start off with this particular data set or start with this governance area? What are your thoughts on that?
That's a great question as well. Prioritization to me, it's always a function of two things. One is the business outcome, right? So what kind of outcome is this going to enable? Is this an outcome? Again, everything we do in government is for serving the needs of the citizens, right? So how much is this moving the needle for the citizens of the state? How much does it impact their lives directly, right? Some programs may affect their lives indirectly because they make other agencies more efficient. An example would be, we do need to establish like a formal architecture, practice, right? I'm just keeping an example. If we have a end-to-end enterprise architecture practice that's going to serve all the agencies, is going to get us one common reference architecture, which will help us kind of drive towards that future that we always dream of and we aspire towards, right? But it does that in a roundabout way. Whereas there are other programs which may depend on having a robust foundation in architecture, but they impact, they can deliver services to our citizens with what we have today. So it's a little bit of a toss-up between how much do we invest for the future, which ones do we prioritize that will get us some immediate quick wins. Because in IT, not just in government, but also in the private sector, the turnaround with projects, the turnaround time has shrunk from years. It used to be 3 to 5 years before you could deliver something tangible in the data warehousing or BI space, right? It's like, multi-year projects, they're built in chunks, but you'll get the whole thing in 3 years. Those days are gone, right? In IT, we expect quick turnarounds. Anything that goes without 6 months, without delivering a tangible outcome, people start to wonder what it does, right? Is this going to be, something that's going to be fulfilling a particular need down the line or not? So having that ability to think about current state problems, apply it to future state frameworks, and being able to demonstrate value as we go is very, very important. So finding those projects usually, means interviewing a lot of the stakeholders, understanding the pain points, and of course, as you know, within government, from a political standpoint, which ones make more sense, right? Given the environment that we're in, right? So if it's COVID, that was 2020. Many of our resources were deployed on building like COVID dashboards and things like that. The whole every IT department in the country was facing that challenge, right? Now that we have a little bit of relief from that, hopefully it stays that way, right? That we can focus our energies towards solving for other problems that have not gotten as much attention over the last 2 years. And we are all raring to go to make some things possible on those lines. So that's kind of like a long-winded answer to your question around, the business impact of things, and then obviously availability of relationships, right? Do we have access to the right, decision makers? Do we have access to the right subject matter experts? Because everybody's busy, everybody's running around doing their, day jobs, and here we are talking about transformation and changing the world. So, finding the right partner agencies that have that mindset, that ability to change, ability to, think about the future, I think it's very important. But we are incredibly blessed in North Dakota that our, agency chiefs, everybody that I've interacted with, they are all eager to learn. They have an open mind. Even if they don't agree with all of our ideas, they're willing to listen, offer their perspectives, and then we all learn and grow together. So that's something I truly enjoy about the state.
On that high note, Ravi, wanting to grow smarter together and moving towards a positive future, I want to thank you for joining me today and for sharing all your perspectives with me and the audience, including sharing a secret, which is, the audience is going to love hearing about. As for the audience, please continue to visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Ravi, again, thank you for your time and sharing your perspectives today.
Thank you, Adita. It was a pleasure talking to you today. I appreciate your time as well.